Hello, my name is Claire Mattingly and I'm a celebrant of life, as you are no doubt aware as you've landed on my page. In my last video I was talking about writing a eulogy and the story writing process, and I did promise to actually go through the questions that I usually ask, so this might help to be prepared if you want to do that before we meet, and also if you're thinking of writing your own eulogy, it just sort of gives you an idea of where to start and how I normally collect information from families, bearing in mind that I often won't know anything about a person's story, so I'm starting from scratch. So I start with the basics, I have some basic questions that I use, and then we sort of expand from there. Sometimes we don't even get to the questions. Those that like to talk and share their memories and have a lot prepared, I just do my best to keep up and write it all down. But if people have been unsure, it does help to have something to focus on, a list of questions, and we can make sure we've captured sort of the key points, which always leads to other memories and other stories, which I will also write down along the way. So it's not rigid, it's very fluid, as I've said before. It's just a general chat, but it does, having a checklist helps me keep on track. And then as the conversation goes off on a tangent sometimes, gathering lots of lovely memories, just sort of making sure that we have covered all of the major events of someone's life, so to speak, and that we've not left anything out. So it's a good way, going back after we've chatted and I've collected as much as I can, just to sort of make sure that chronologically I have everything that's happened, all the significant points of time, that we've not missed any grandchildren, brothers and sisters, that sort of thing. So it does really help to have a bit of a guide just to refer to, but not to be led by. But as I mentioned, hopefully it will be useful if I sort of in advance give you an idea of the things that I might ask, because we don't always know these things off the top of our head and may have never done this before. So I'd start with sort of early life, things like date of birth. I'm looking at my form here, so I can tell you what I generally ask for. So date of birth, place of birth, and this would then lead us into parents' names. So mum and dad, what were they called? Their position within the family, and did they have brothers and sisters? Were they the eldest or the youngest, or where did they come in the lineup? What were the brothers and sisters called? And that might seem like an easy question, but when it's people that we haven't always met within our family, it can be a bit tricky. But also, we don't have to include all of these things in a eulogy, not at all. And if there are things that you don't know about a person's life, that's perfectly okay. I will always work with what we do know, so we'd focus on that. But it's always worth asking the question, because, or thinking about the question at least, because if we can include some sort of detail that people might not know, that might be significant, that might spark a memory or a story, then it's really useful to do that. So moving on, we would talk about where the person was raised, where they went to school, where they grew up. This in turn might then lead to stories that they've told you about childhood and growing up, and some really funny memories that they had, or sometimes sad memories, sometimes good memories, achievements that maybe they had in their childhood. So maybe they were a choir boy, maybe they got evacuated in the war, maybe they started work at a really young age because times were tough, and the family rallied round to pool their resources, so they could have a reasonable existence, particularly during times of rationing and things like that. If the person's younger, it would be a whole different set of memories and experiences that they probably had. So that's always a good idea, to try and capture as many of those as you can. Again, we don't have to use it all, but it does spark conversation and shared memories, if there's a few of you at the meeting, which can be really quite interesting and a nice thing to do, actually, to reminisce and talk about those old stories. So the next thing we might talk about is sort of the next stage in life. For the majority of people, I would say, would be, if they were married, and how they met their significant other, where they got married, where they started their life together, that sort of thing. Again, any sort of stories about how they met and where they met, and there can be some really interesting memories there too. Things that they would often talk of that were significant for them and that stuck in their mind that maybe not a lot of people know about them, so it can be lovely to share that. Then we're going to be talking about children, the family tree, how many children are there, what are their names, how many grandchildren are there, and so forth. The children's memories. So perhaps, if we're talking about mum or dad, growing up with mum or dad, what did you all do as a family? What do you remember about them? What kind of parent were they? That sort of thing. So just sort of some general memories from that time when they were, young parents. Then we would look at, as time goes on, what job did the person do? Did they have a career? Did they do a lot of different jobs? Where did they work? Did they enjoy it? Were they doing something they loved? Were they just, they were providing for their family? They worked hard, or maybe not everybody does work. For some, they're looking after their family. That's something really important to them. They're a very good mother and homemaker, and these sorts of things. So they were dedicated their life to bringing up their children. They maybe had lots of hobbies or interests, or volunteered a lot, anything like that. So we want to be noting at this point. And again, any stories linked to those things. So you've got the factual element of it, so trying to capture all those sort of main facts for the story of someone's life, but also bearing in mind that we want to be weaving in memories. So when we're talking about those facts, sort of putting those in context as well, and bringing them to life with favourite memories. Other things we might talk about are hobbies and interests. So, what were they good at sports? Did they love to play football or golf or rugby or something like that? Were they good at it? Were they competitive? Were they in any teams? There might also be other hobbies. Maybe someone loved tapestry or sewing and cross stitch. They were really good dressmaker. They're a really good cook. There's no real limit on that, is there? There are just so many different weird and wonderful things that people do. Again, just trying to capture that and any stories related to it. We also want to know if they had really good friends, if they had like a circle of friends that they did a lot of things with. Maybe they went on holiday with them. Maybe they loved to travel and they saw so many interesting places. What countries did they go to? What were their favourites? Are there any stories, things that happened, from those holidays that they would repeat and they would tell you because they were of some significance to them? Also, there's trying to capture a person's personality and their character as much as we can. So you knew them, so you sort of, if I'm writing it, it really helps if you can give me some idea of what they were like, what kind of mannerisms did they have favourite quotes or things that they would often say, things they would often do, how they would talk. Maybe they were very direct and forthright. Maybe they were a bit more shy and quiet. Maybe they had an amazing sense of humour. They're really funny. They would tell great stories or jokes, play practical jokes, that sort of thing. Maybe they like to keep themselves to themselves. Or maybe they're very private people, and maybe they were the kind of person that would go out of their way to help other people and love nothing better than getting stuck in and helping others and you know, feeling useful and helpful was what, you know, really drove them in life. So that's something that meant a lot to them. You know, how did they feel about their family? Were they, you know, very devoted to bringing up their children? Were they a bit aloof and a bit sort of more involved in their interests maybe? And there is also, you know, the times when someone isn't all that nice. So we always say loved ones, but sometimes we have to arrange funerals for people actually that we don't love very much. Maybe we were estranged from, but we are left with, you know, putting this service together for those that might come, that might have felt differently about them. So then we handle that, you know, a bit more sensitively. We try and, you know, find, you know, the positives from life and what they were good at and what they did like to do, and any good times you did have. It's always worth acknowledging the people the things that people most remember, even if they're not so great, because otherwise it's like the elephant in the room. If you're, you know, sort of avoiding a particular subject, it's best to just sort of touch on it. We don't have to dwell on it, but just to touch on the fact that maybe, you know, they weren't perfect and they had a particular issue, but on the flip side, you know, that there were other things that they brought to this life and to this world, if that's possible. Or again, as I said in my previous video as well, is encouraging the rest of the family that perhaps can't be there at the meeting to note their memories down, to record some of their memories that can be shared and can be sent to me so I can put it in the eulogy. Also, you know, you can put it in the story, and, you know, bringing all those together so it's a real rounded version of who you felt your person was and what they meant to you and to everybody else. So it just sort of gives a more rounded view from different perspectives as well, which again is just really interesting because we learn so much when we see someone else from someone else's perspective, and we celebrate that in them, and we celebrate all those amazing things that they did, who they were, and even if they just lived the absolute simplest of lives and didn't do anything much and just, you know, sat watching EastEnders every day. There's always something to be found, and initially you might think there is not a lot to be said, but we can always find things, and this is what this whole process is about. This just having the chat, gathering some details. It always sparks memories. I don't think I've had a single meeting where we started talking about basic facts that haven't led into memories that you just couldn't remember before I arrived, but suddenly they all start flooding back. It's that, you know, that chat, that talking about it, things start popping into your mind, and if you've got other people there as well, you're sort of all bouncing off each other, and there's so much comes out, and what you thought would be, you know, the smallest eulogy possible actually becomes quite substantial, because there is always a lot to say. Again, even in for the people that have lived the most simplest of lives. It's extraordinary, and actually it's one of the most favourite parts of my job, and the part of the job that I enjoy the most, I think, because to learn about people, to learn about their story is completely fascinating, and to see everybody enjoying the process most of the time. You know, 99% of the time people are sort of dreading this, going through this part, but it always completely flips, and they find that they've actually, you know, quite enjoyed it. To be able to just take a moment, take an hour or two, just to purely concentrate on this person we're going to celebrate and all your favourite memories of them. You never really get the opportunity to do that. It's a very unique situation, and yeah, absolutely, we'll make the most of it, and we'll try and capture as much as we can. So I hope that's been helpful. There will be other things for sure. but that's sort of the basic questions I ask that lead to so much more. So if this is something you wanted to try to do yourself, then hopefully some of the pointers there, some of the questions there will help you start brainstorming for writing that tribute. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye.